All right, hello everyone. Here we are back for a golf clash tutorial video here. This is going to be for the Eagle Peak, hole number 2 from the tournament. And you can see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to highlight this first tee box. That's what we're going to be talking about here. So this will be for the first tee instruction. Now, one of the things to kind of make a note of, which I'm going to kind of start off with here. So for a power 1 ball, we're going to pretty much be looking at a divider line right about this spot. So up on this side is going to be your wood, and down here is going to be your iron. Now, of course, this line is going to shift up as you put on a power ball, but I'm assuming from the first tee, you should be able to get away with a power 1 or a power 2 ball, which should change this very minimally. There will be maybe just a couple exceptions if you, for some reason, on the original hole got maybe a nasty headwind and you wanted to ensure that you could make it to the shootout. Perhaps maybe you'd put on a power 3 ball, which could, greatly kind of change the way that you need to go doing this shot. So first, let's talk about method 1, which is going to be a bump type shot. And what I'm going to put here, I'm going to just put sniper 6. You're really not going to need, you could probably get away with even less, to be honest with you, sniper 4, for instance. In fact, I can just write that down if you'd want, because I'm assuming, especially from the first tee, maybe, your bag does look like that. Similarly, I'm going to throw on here just Guardian. It really just needs to be unlocked. A Guardian 1, Guardian 2. What's nice about a 2 is you find I think the very first, when you unlock it, it might start off with just a tiny bit of ball guide lacking, and I think it does kind of start to pick up right at a level 2. Similarly, hammerhead here, I'm going to grab, and really you just have to have this unlocked. You're not going to need, it's going to kind of come with very good accuracy already unlocked, and for this shot you won't need much spin whatsoever. I'm going to throw Viper down here, and again, it doesn't need to be, I'm assuming if you're playing with this club, you probably have it already like maybe a 5 or 6 anyway. So I'll just throw, Viper 6 in there. I'm assuming that's probably the most developed wood you have at this point. So there's a good chance that it'll probably be there anyway. And then below that, let me just throw this on here. And these are ranked in order as to, highest to lowest priority. You're going to want the sniper for this. It has very good extended ball guide. It usually starts out at about 4.0. So you're going to always have a very good ball guide on it, and that's why it takes highest precedent here on my sheet. And let's talk just a little bit about the shot that we're going to hit. It's kind of land around here, and if you've seen my golden shot tutorial, it's basically land right here. Second hop, you want to run into this fairway or fringe, or very close to the fringe with the second hop. Third hop, and then just kind of roll it in here. And to do this, typically we're going to use, let me go ahead and put this little wind diagram up here for you guys. So this should cover all the different wind types you could see here with this little chart here. And for my normal shot of no wind, what I'm typically going to do here, what color did I draw that? Yellow? Okay. So what I'll typically do is 1 backspin here. It's really not going to need much fluctuation in terms of the headwind. I could go, depending on how strong it gets, so somewhere between 0 to 0.5. Just depends on how strong it gets. And what's nice about this landing zone is you can kind of move it up a little bit and down a little bit as necessary. So you really don't even have to really tweak the spin too much if you're, very intuitive with the way that you go about moving your land zone. But that can be kind of a dangerous game too, because you want to make sure that that second bounce does still kind of land in the same general vicinity. You know, especially you want it to avoid the rough. And, you know, if it hits onto the green, it's probably going to come in with too much speed. So you do got to be a little bit careful when you try to change the land zone. But you'll see, you know, kind of what I have in here. We'll just throw 0.75 in for this case up here. And very similarly, you know, you're really not going to typically see me even change this one backspin. I'll pretty much just use one on this no matter what, and just kind of tweak this land zone, just as I mentioned, kind of just pull it back just a little bit. And, you know, not needing to add on there is kind of important, because what will end up happening if you sometimes put too much backspin is you'll get it to basically not run out. There's like a little mound right in here, and you got to make sure that it comes in with a little bit of speed. So that's why I kind of, you know, just slide this just slightly, maybe like a ring. And you can see these leaves over here. You'll see my positioning. And if you want to take a look and want to see this shot firsthand, do pull up my golden shot tutorial, and you'll be able to see quite a few attempts there. Now, if in fact you bring a little bit better power ball on, for instance, that line could be pushed right to this line. So it could become a very challenging shot with a Titan ball on if you get a tailwind. So what you'll want to do for a ball, as I mentioned, kind of power 1, power 2 ball is going to be ideal to be able to do that shot. Alternatively, you know, you might need to change your shot a little bit and kind of land right around here. I try to keep it just a little bit short of the bunker here. And what I'll do is I'll just play around with my side spin. You'll want to be thinking wind effect on this, so you'll just kind of use your ball guide. You know, if it looks like you have the second bounce going around here, this is more or less what you want. Third bounce about here, and then just a little bit of run out. It's not going to run out very much here, and you will kind of change. And let me just make a note here. So going back to here, these are backspin values. And similarly with these are also going to be backspin values. So both are going to be backspin values, but you'll see. And this shot will get easier with a Titan ball on. You'll also want, so let me make a kind of a case 2, an argument for case 2 here, which you're probably going to want a very good distance. So for instance, B52, we'll call this, let me go ahead and erase that real quick. Probably a 4 would probably be the minimal that you could roll with here. You could maybe get a 3, but might be conditional on the wind. So that'll be the first priority that you'll want. Next will be kind of a Goliath. And the biggest reason for this, is it a 5, I believe? It's kind of the minimum that you're going to want here. And that's where accuracy starts to finally roll up a little bit. But having that range is going to be very valuable for this shootout. If they gave you a headwind and you had a power 1 and you didn't have one of these two options, it might make this shot much harder. If you have to play down here towards the, down here in the fairway, because you don't have the range to move it any farther, the shot does become harder. So alternatively, from there, you would probably maybe put backbone next. And I would say maybe an 8 here would be nice. They really don't. Well, let me throw on 7 because I think you can get away with a 7 here. But the only problem is your distance, your length number is not going to be very long there. So that's kind of the priority that you'll want to use in terms of setting this up. Ideally B52, but I would recommend Goliath for the range, just so you can cover yourself. And the way that you're going to apply the backspin in this case is going to be a little bit different as well. So what I'll typically do for my base case, I'll probably, with my side wind here, this is side wind, so I'll typically use maybe right around 2. I would say 1.5 to 2 backspin. So, you know, somewhere in both of these would kind of be 1.5 to 2. So if you can use 1.5 to 2 there, it's going to be what you'll typically want to do, because you're shooting to a lower elevation on this hole. So when you shoot to that lower elevation, what ends up happening is the ball comes in and it kind of has natural backspin on it. So what I'll typically do with an iron shot is I'll maybe use around 4 backspin. However, this 1.5 to 2 backspin comes in very equivalently to what a 4 typically would. It's because you're shooting to a lower target. It's kind of applying natural backspin just by the way that it lands. And when you hit this shot a couple times, you'll see what I'm talking about. And into a headwind, you know, there's times that I can probably, you know, go down to as little as 0 here. Maybe I'll just throw 1.5 to be safe. And we'll just say for these cases over here, 1. And these are still backspin values, keep in mind. So somewhere around there, and with the tailwind, that's the only time that I'll start to kind of crank it up. So if I was to go, you know, maybe 2, 2.5 here, just depending on how strong the wind is, 2 to 2.5. And, you know, with this straight down tailwind, maybe use a 3, depending on how strong it gets. Now, what you'll want to do is you'll want to use your ball guide as kind of, you know, for this shot, it's very hard. If you have a very tough side wind, for instance, so if the wind was coming in this direction for some reason, you know, you're going to want to kind of offset your guide and make sure that you kind of have the ball guide kind of over here in this fashion, because after you actually move the rings, it's going to deflect and go much more like this blue line. So this is the type of stuff that you need to be thinking about, and how much you need to do that is dependent upon how strong that wind gets. So do be very careful about that. And when we're talking about the different wind types here, let me put the head, the tail, and the side wind cases. So let's talk about these cases. So what I'll typically use, I'm going to go back to color coding here. So we're talking about the wood shot now. So with the headwind for the wood shot here, I'm going to use at least, nope, let me put, I meant to put max in here, max plus 20 minimum, and that's if it's a very small wind, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 miles per hour, somewhere in there. As it starts to grow, I might go as much as 30%. So somewhere between max plus 20, max plus 30 is what you'll want to be using there for that wind. Similarly, when we're talking about the tailwind here for this shot, I'm pretty much going to use, you know, kind of max, kind of spot up. I won't need to go beyond max for this tailwind, because what's going to end up happening is I'll end up pushing towards this min line, and it kind of lowers the trajectory. So with the downhill, it still ends up playing towards max club. And, you know, max in itself kind of takes care of that. And with this side wind case, I'll typically play somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe max to max plus 10. Depends on how big. The bigger this wind gets, you might want to throw on that max plus 10%. So as it gets to 6, 7 miles per hour, for instance, that's where you'll want to kind of start upping that. And additionally, to this shot, it's going to require some kind of curl. So, well, either curl or side spin. So let's say ideally, you know, this is my shot circle right here. So when I'm landing on this spot right here, my normal, let's, you know, just talk about the side wind here. Let me just make kind of a note here. So here's the side wind. And for the side wind case, it really depends on which way that it's direction. If it's direction towards the, you know, for instance, that I have this wind here. Is that like the arrow that I have above? Yes. Okay. So in this instance where it's already, the wind's going that direction, I'm still going to need to apply some curl here, but it might be very, very minimal. So I'll only need to kind of put the ball kind of just partially outside this circle, if this is my shot circle right here. So I only need to put about this much curl on in that case up there. So let's take a look at the next case, which, I'll use gray in this one. So either a headwind or a tailwind, doesn't matter. It's not really going to change the way that you need to curl, but I might start to, move this curl, and you can see how the edge of the ball kind of touches kind of the edge of the shot circle here. And lastly, let's take a look. Let me just throw on this one. So in this case right here, if the wind's pointed this direction, which means it's, pointed to the left pretty hard, which means, that wind effect is going to really try pushing the ball to the left, so you'll need even more curl. So you might need to start pulling enough curl that it's even just a little bit outside the shot circle here. So, you'll kind of have to scale your curl for this rough bump shot. So that's for the rough bump shot only. Alternatively, with this blue shot circle, with the iron shot, you'll just kind of counter the wind is what I would do. So you can either offset the guide, kind of like I did on this purple, or alternatively, you could just kind of counter whatever direction. If the wind's pointed left, counter with right curl. If the wind's pointed right, counter with, left curl. And you'll just kind of use kind of just a little half ball or so outside the circle there. Alternatively from this, let's take a look at the adjustments for the iron. So what I'll typically do with the headwind, I might do max plus 40%, give or take. If it gets up really high, maybe even max plus 50. So somewhere in that range, just depends on how high that it gets. So again, that, and kind of where this line falls, that's quite a bit of wind to accommodate for. So you might run out of rings. So it's something that you have to be careful of. You might have to tweak this landing zone a little bit, which could end up altering your spin lines as well. But that's typically what I'll use for the adjustment, because it's a very downhill shot and you're right at max club. So you have to accommodate for that in your adjustment. With the tailwind case, what I'll typically do is about max plus 20 to 30. And again, it's just going to kind of, let me just throw on here max plus 25 just as kind of a base case. And it's just really going to depend on how strong it is. But it is going to fly down farther beyond max because it's a downhill shot. So you will need to go beyond max with the adjustment. And similar with the side wind case here, let me just throw on, max plus 20, somewhere in that effect. So whatever your max adjustment, go 20% beyond that, and you're typically going to be, in the ballpark of where you need to go. But, even max plus 25 isn't going to hurt you. So, good luck with this hole. Hopefully you find this beneficial, and catch you guys on the next one.